What's up? I don't know who's going to be watching this, but I figured I'd at least do an introduction of myself. Go by Aaron. Also go by Chatter, which is my nickname on the Appalachian Trail. It's called the trail name. So I'll give you the 20-foot picture of what's going on, why I have a home gym, and what exercises I'm doing, what I hope to achieve with this channel. I'll try to keep it brief, but there's a lot going on, so I might have to give more detailed background later. If you're interested, put it down in the comments below if anybody follows or watches this. So I was pretty much a diehard couch potato starting out back forever. I actually decided that in high school, instead of doing athletics, I would get into working full-time, making some money, playing video games and watching TV and movies. I continued this trend up until 2012. I've been married for several years at that point, and I was about 360 pounds or more. I don't really know because the scale I had only went up to 360, so that's where I pretty much just stopped the weight counting at. It was bad. So in February of 2012, the doctor told me that I was doomed for certain death if I did not change my habits or my ways. And my wife and I ended up going on a vacation and mulling it over, and we decided to try the Couch to 5K. If you're not familiar with the Couch to 5K, the whole idea is that you within like 2 or 3 months would be running a 5K based on doing an interval training program where you're doing a mixture of walking and running, and you eventually remove the walking from the program. So that was February, March, and I could barely mow the lawn, walk to the curb to get my mail. I was pretty out of shape. The funny thing was, though, my wife and I, we enrolled in a gym and started to do treadmill together for one day. I immediately had so much pain in my hip that I could not move, and I ended up going to the doctor, and he told me I had to be running on a treadmill at that point. Well, not treadmill, I had to be running in water. And so, long and short of it, I ended up at LA Fitness, where I was in the pool running. And April, May is usually the big time of the year for triathletes. And so while I'm going back and forth up and down the aisles, doing my running, trying to lose weight, trying to get ready for a 5K in October, I see all these triathletes swing back and forth, and I start thinking to myself, you know, if I'm going to be standing at the starting line in October, maybe I could actually try something a little bit bigger. And oddly enough, I went home and found the next triathlon I could actually enter in the following year. It was the first one of the year in April, which was really early. And so I could not bike, I could not swim, I could barely walk/run. I was actually in the pool because of running issues. And so I ended up signing up for a triathlon. Well, lo and behold, I had to teach myself how to swim, I had to teach myself how to run, I had to teach myself how to get on a bike. And when you're a very heavy, big guy, bikes are not very friendly. Pools are, but not bikes. So fast forward a little bit, I ended up doing my first triathlon the following year, my first 5K that October, and then I did my first half marathon at the end of 2013. Decided I never wanted to do a marathon, but for some odd reason, a trail ultra marathon, which is 32 miles or more, or anything over 26, but usually about 32-ish miles on really tough trails. I decided that was the ideal that I wanted to go for, and so I signed up for one of those the following year. I didn't know that that would actually influence the direction I would take things with my fitness, but after doing several more triathlons and trying different distances of triathlons and different distances of running, I ended up getting the ultra marathon bug, and I started running 24-hour races, 50-mile races, 40-mile races, 30-mile races, all on really rough and rugged trails with super slow speed. So fast forward to 2019. In 2019, I was starting to have a lot of problems with breathing. I was starting to get slower. My diet was okay. I had gotten down to 270 pounds. I'm currently at 300 right now. And I was just having a lot of problems, and I thought it was just old age. I'm 50 at this point, so at that point I was like 48, and I thought it was just old age that was causing all the problems. So I ended up somewhat ignoring it. Ultra runners have niggles and naggles everywhere. Everything's always falling apart or something's wrong. You're puking, it just means you didn't take enough electrolytes. You know, it's the mentality of it. Not the smartest, but so in September I ran a 35 to 40 mile ultra in the middle of nowhere. and it took me 21 hours to finish, which is about the same amount of time as it took me to finish my first 50 mile on pretty much the same course. And so I realized something was wrong, but I was still being belligerent about it. And in November, fast forward a little bit, in November, I'm actually having problems breathing, I'm coughing a lot. Family believes it's still pneumonia, and by the middle of December, right before Christmas, it's at its all-time worst, and I ended up in the hospital. Turns out I had blood pressure of 230, I think, 230 over 150, over 160, and I was actually suffering from coronary artery disease, and I had congestive heart failure. Yes, I was running 50-mile weeks to 100-mile weeks, and I was still having these problems, but genetics had caught up to me. So fast forward, they couldn't do any surgery immediately, so I had to wait until the end of January, and I ended up having a quad bypass done. Well, your body's never quite the same after that, but I already had some other issues popping up, like I was starting to have some pain in my hip, and so after surgery, about 6 months later, I continued to try to push forward, continued to try to run, and my hip just got worse. So 2021, turns out that the hip problem I had was actually genetic. It was actually bone-on-bone hip arthritis that was at this point very acute. And by the end of 2021, I was out doing an 8-mile attempt up a mountain. And at 4 miles in, I could not put weight on my right knee anymore. It turns out I have meniscus surgery. So going into 2022, I had to decide what my goals would be because running was not working. Every time I tried to run, it was just so much pain. It took me too long to recover. And due to the heart surgery and everything else, I gained about 20 pounds in 2 weeks, which is what I learned is actually a really bad sign for heart problems. So I'm an active person since 2012, and I had to figure something to do. And so what I ended up doing was I decided to go back to weightlifting. I've done some weightlifting off and on, but never done it more than 3 or 4 months at a time. Always got caught doing something else. And so I figured that would be what I would do. I'd dedicate 5 to 6 days a week, lifting weights. And so I started getting into the gym, start building a habit out of it. And then in the middle of the year, I ended up with I ended up with a malignant melanoma and cancer in my arm, and they take out 7 inches. I don't know if you can see it or not. They take out 7 inches of skin and flesh all the way down to the bone. I was supposed to take out a lymph node, but they didn't because it didn't look like it spread anywhere. And if you don't know anything about malignant melanoma, it has a tendency to spread very fast. And if they might not see it in the skin, but they could actually spread through the blood. And so they were really worried for quite a while. So I get the all clear about end of August, beginning of September, and I start to work out again, start to get heavily into weightlifting. And at that time, I actually build out the gym that's surrounding me right now in November. But I also decide I have to take up something for cardio. Walking's too boring. I can't really run because it takes me weeks to recover because the hip is so bad and the knee is so bad. So I ended up taking up boxing. Oddly enough, I could do boxing. It was short movements. It was good cardio, and I loved it. Remember, be kind. Please react.